Hey everybody, welcome back to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Again, that website address for you, just in case you don't already know what it is. It's theclinicaltrialsguru.com. How can I explain this? It is a blog. I do some written posts. There's definitely some guest contributors who write a little more than I do. Although I do have some ebooks available on Amazon. You can find them through my bio. There's also a video blog. This is also a podcast where it's like audio only. So I really believe in the strategy of be everywhere. Be everywhere you can be, all platforms, whether it's YouTube, Google, of course, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, for those of you listening on the podcast. So those are some of the ways that you can consume this content. No matter which way you consume, I hope you find it valuable. And today's podcast / video, today's piece of content is going to be revolving around viewer questions. Okay, so the first one, it's going to be revolving around viewer questions. And before I get into that, I want to plug in my 2 DVDs, and a third one is on the way shortly. It's Introduction to Clinical Research, so that's for people who are brand new to research, or perhaps interested in getting a career in clinical trials. You're going to learn everything on there, from GCPs, which is good clinical practice, to working with IRBs, to what a study coordinator does, to what a PI does, what a PI's responsibilities are, different kind of things like that. And that's about 2-hour-long DVD, and it includes 4 bonus discs, which are some of my best interviews that I've conducted on this website from the past 4 years or so. So those will be on there as well. And another DVD that you can buy through my site is how to get more studies for your research clinic. So pretty self-explanatory. I'm currently working on the 3rd DVD that will soon be available for purchase. It's going to be all about patient recruitment, how to recruit more study participants for clinical trials, how to use social media to recruit study participants, how to be compliant with the IRBs while recruiting study participants. So those are some of the DVDs you can find on the blog, on the site, at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. With that being said, please send in your questions to dan@theclinicaltrialsguru.com. You will remain anonymous unless you specifically ask not to be. And I'm just going to go through some of the questions. Some people email me directly. Others send me emails through LinkedIn, which is where I do a lot of networking, actually, for people in this industry who work in the clinical research industry. You might know that LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn, you should get on there. I talk about it a lot in the DVD, how to get more studies for your clinical research clinic. So this one will be, let's just go through some of these questions. Okay, the first one is from someone who will remain anonymous. It says, "Good morning, Dan. Thank you for posting your videos. I just recently interviewed for a clinical research coordinator position with a cancer research organization. The phone interview went well, and I have been called in to attend a face-to-face interview next week on Tuesday. Any advice on how I should prepare for the second interview? I'm a recent graduate with an MPH, I'm assuming that's Master of Public Health, degree, and with some, but albeit minimal, experience in clinical research. I could use any and all advice on how to prepare for the second interview. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to your response." All right, so the good thing is you do have research experience. So you don't want to go into the interview telling them that you have minimal experience. I mean, if they ask, you tell them I have clinical research experience. If they ask for specifics, you're not going to lie. You're going to tell them exactly what you've done and how many months or years you've worked in the industry. Okay, so you don't want to go in there with the attitude that I have minimal research experience. You want to go in there with your positives, okay? Everything that you have going for you that can help you get the job. You don't want to go in there and focus on your negatives. So while you may think you have minimal research experience, they may not necessarily care about that. They, being a cancer research organization, may care much more about your interests and your passion with cancer, with oncology. So go in there really prepared to tell them exactly why you want to work in clinical research, specifically cancer research, okay? Because when I hire for my research clinics, we do CNS trials, central nervous system studies. We also do some neurology trials. So whenever I interview a coordinator, to be honest with you, I don't necessarily care about research experience, although that's a plus if you do have it. And in your case, you do have it, okay? So no more with this minimal experience. You have clinical research experience. I ask them, as an employer, why are you passionate about working in central nervous system studies? Why are you passionate about working in the CNS field? So in your case, they're going to ask you, why are you passionate about oncology? Why are you passionate about cancer research? So you better be prepared with a really good answer. Hopefully something personal. But if you can't, just make it genuine. Whatever it is, make it be a genuine interest in cancer, in oncology. And then discuss with them some of the concepts that you do know about research. Talk to them about whatever experience you did have with, let's say, good clinical practice, with informed consent, with the process of informed consent, with working with IRBs, with working with study participants and their families. Perhaps you helped in recruiting study participants or in retention. Just talk to them about very specific things that you've done. So you're going to kind of disguise the fact that you have minimal experience, okay? Because if you go very specific and talk about specific details you've done, perhaps you can mention some of the protocols you've worked on without giving away the actual protocol, but talk about some of the interesting things that you have come across in your experience with clinical research. Talk about, again, your passion for cancer, for oncology. In these face-to-face interviews, they pretty much want to get to know who you are. They want to know whether you'll be a good fit in their culture. And most importantly, they want to make sure that you are not just going to be there for like a few months and then leave, because they're going to be investing money in training you. Even if you have a lot of experience in clinical research, whenever you go work for a new company, they are going to be invested in training you in their company's processes and their SOPs, their standard operating procedures. So make sure you go in there with the attitude that you're willing to learn and that you have a passion for research, specifically cancer in your case, and hopefully you do well. I mean, just go in there prepared, go in there knowing the key terms, the industry lingo, like good clinical practice, standard operating procedures, informed consent, process of informed consent, things like that. So you don't want to go in there not knowing what these key phrases are specific to this industry. Hopefully that helps. Let's move on to the next question. It is actually from someone who works for a EDC platform. And I'll keep this person anonymous because they did not specify whether they would like to be mentioned. So let me read this because it's more like a statement and then it has some questions in it. So hopefully, and I may not know all these answers, but it definitely brings up a good dialogue, and I want to see some dialogue in the comments section. I want to see some more emails generated because of this question, and then hopefully we could break it down. But I will basically give a general overview and my opinion on this question. It's a good question. So hi, Dan, a question for you. How many of your sponsors or CROs process your payments in an automated fashion? Do you even know? I'm not even sure they will tell you. So if what you mean by automated is that it does not depend on a human reviewing it, I would say none. Okay, most of our payments are triggered when CRAs review data that has been entered in the EDC system. There are some studies where we are paid and the payments are not dependent on the CRA's source verifying the data, but that is rare. So in those cases, the payments are automated. I would say probably 10% or less. My guess, this is just my best guess. They don't tell you. The sponsors do not tell us. You kind of have, if you ask, they will kind of let you know, but it's not something that's specified in the contract at all. Most contracts say monthly payments, but when you actually look into the monthly payment in detail, you'll see that monthly based on when they review the EDC, when the CRA comes out, and they source data, verify all the data from your source documents and the EDC, and all queries are resolved. So the CRA may come to your site on a monthly basis, but you may not actually get paid on a monthly basis. You may get paid every 2 months or every 3 months, even though the contract says every month. In my experience, sponsors do try to keep the monthly payment standard if it is in the contract. Now, if it's quarterly payments, which I definitely do not recommend, and I think that's where your question stemmed from, was from a video where I said make sure you get monthly payments instead of quarterly payments for your clinical research site. The reason I say avoid quarterly payments is because, as you see, even when it's monthly payments, more often than not, the payments end up being quarterly anyways. So if you have quarterly payments, more often than not, they're going to be bi-yearly payments, more than likely. I've had some studies where we had quarterly payments and we only got paid twice a year. So it often depends on the CRAs reviewing the data, and then, of course, the coordinators answering the queries, and then the payments triggered. As far as having the automated fashion, very few. But let me continue with this gentleman's email. The ones who can pay easily on a monthly basis typically have their EDC systems, which is the electronic data capture system, set up with an automated feed into their clinical trial management system, which fire automated triggers that process payments based on data entry and site monitoring. Okay, this is exactly what I said. They also pay on high-value procedures like MRIs or something else, and other contract negotiable items, like the advance fees for when you start up. These are called startup payments, or payments for training, like for your staff to get trained. If this electronic process is set up, then the payments could even be more frequent than monthly because the manual spreadsheet work is gone. This is the major reason for the delay. The second is cash flow from the paying organization. So yeah, the cash flow from the paying organization, especially if it's a CRO, I understand that they get paid from the sponsor and then they turn around and pay the sites. So if the CRO, and I've seen this happen, where the CRO does not get paid in time from the sponsor, then of course that delays payments to the sites. Regardless of whether your contract says monthly or quarterly, you're going to get paid when the sponsor gets paid, or when the sponsor releases payments, period. I've seen cases where monitors were source verifying the data, but they were forgetting to do a few steps in their own process. They had internal processes that they had to follow, and they did not do it for whatever reason. They were new monitors, or it was a new process that they were learning, and it delayed payments several months. And this was very recently, actually, and this was on one of those so-called automated systems. At least that's what the sponsor was telling me. So this is how we do it from the technical standpoint. So I appreciate that. I see what you're saying. The major reason for delay is the fact that there is a human being responsible for making sure that the payments that are being triggered are correct, and this all depends on human work, not machines. I wish it would, but this is something that probably should get better, but I don't know if the sponsors or CROs necessarily put that much of a priority on this. I've had long discussions with Anna Marquez. She runs an SMO in Florida. And Anna was talking about the fact that CROs, in her opinion, it's not in their interest to really get these processes as far as paying the sites efficiently in order. I mean, they have other priorities that come much before that. So we will definitely see. I mean, I would love it as a site director, as a site owner, an owner of a few clinics. I would love it if the payments to the sites were more automated. But I think this is about as good as it's going to get. I could be wrong. Hopefully I am wrong, but thank you for the question. I had another question here. Hi Dan, I have a question for you. Do you have any content or any information on investigator-initiated trials and how they work? What information do you have on the relationship between sponsors and investigators when the physicians need to conduct the clinical trial on their product? So this usually happens when a doctor, a physician, comes up with an idea and wants to partner with a pharmaceutical company who's perhaps willing to sponsor the trial based on this investigator. Usually these happen at one site at a time. These are not multi-site studies. So if I'm a physician and I approach Pfizer about doing a trial, perhaps for one of their drugs or something that they would be interested in, they might sponsor me. I would have to write a grant proposal to the drug company. They would have to, of course, approve it. This may take some time. I've worked with some investigators who have done investigator-initiated trials, and they don't do it for the money. I mean, these investigators, when they do these investigator-initiated trials, they do it for the publication rights. So they don't do it for the budget. The budget is just enough to pay for the study. There's no profit involved at all. I could be wrong, but in the studies that I've worked on with investigator-initiated trials, there has been no profit for the investigators, but that it was not the purpose. The purpose was to get publication rights and to see if the drug actually works. So these are more like the old-fashioned type of studies. And yes, they do happen every so often. I believe they have to be registered on clinicaltrials.gov. I could be wrong, so someone should let me know. I should probably ask Darshan Kulkarni next time I see him about that. But I believe they should be listed on clinicaltrials.gov. So that's what I know about investigator-initiated trials. As far as whether a drug company approaches a doctor to do it or whether a doctor approaches a drug company to do it, it's the same thing. Investigator-initiated trial is when the PI is actually co-sponsoring the study with the sponsor and they both share publication rights. Let's see. I have another question here. And thank you guys for sending these. These are awesome questions. I had another question the other day about the process of informed consent. So this one says, "Hey Dan, thanks for the videos. A monitor recently asked me to explain what our site's process of informed consent was. Can you please help?" So in this case, what a process of informed consent is they want to know how your site, through your SOPs, and if you get the DVD Introduction to Clinical Research, you're going to learn all about this, how your site conducts informed consents. They want to know if the PI is conducting the informed consent. They want to know whether the sub-PI is conducting the informed consent. They want to know if the study coordinator is conducting the informed consent, who's conducting the informed consent, where are they being conducted. So is it in a private room? Is it in the waiting room? Is it in the restroom? Where is the consent form being discussed with the subjects? How much time is available for the subject to go through the consent process with whoever is consenting the patient? Is family allowed to come with the study participant? Are they allowed to sit in during the consent process? Do you require caregiver signatures? Do you require signatures from anyone else, legal guardians, legal representatives? Do you give a copy of the informed consent to the subject to take home to review with his or her family before they sign, or do they have to sign it there on the spot? Do you give a copy to them after the consent form has been signed? And so that's the process of consent at screening. Now, informed consent, if you ask anyone, especially consultants or people from the IRBs, the process of informed consent occurs throughout the study. It just begins at the screening visit. That's when you'll probably spend the most time with an informed consent. but the actual informed consent process occurs throughout the duration of the study. So if you're a study participant and you've been in a study for a while and you come to your next visit and they change something in the protocol, guess what? They have to give you another informed consent form to review, go through it with you again, tell you about all the changes, how they may affect you, does it affect your safety. They legally have to let you know these things. So the informed consent process occurs continuously throughout the study. Whenever there's protocol changes, whenever there's amendments, whenever the study participant or their family member has a question. So let's say at visit 3, we've already gone through the consent form at visit 1, but at visit 3, family member asks more questions about the study. Again, you're doing an informed consent all over again. You're explaining what the study is, what you know about it, what their rights are. These are things that sponsors look for, and these are the answers they want to hear when they ask you these questions. I'm assuming they were asking you this at a site selection visit for a study, because that's usually where sponsors or CROs ask you these questions. Hopefully that helps answer your question. I want to keep this video relatively short, and I wanted to give my Clinical Trial Guru producers a shout out before I go. So before we wrap up, I want to say thank you to Sarah Elizabeth Siegler, Resolve Research Solutions, Accurate Clinical Trials, Erdhart Clinical Trials, PTNR, Patrick Stone, Darshan Kulkarni, Biopharm Systems, ZymeWire, Mozio, South Coast Clinical Trials, Breakthrough Clinical Trials, St. Paul Medical Research Center, Investigators Research Group, and Phlebotomy Services. And if you're interested in being a Clinical Trial Guru producer, the cost is $99 for a lifetime membership. The only catch is I'm only accepting 100 people, and that's it. I don't care if you're the 101st person and you are Pfizer. You will not get a producer spot. Although if you're Pfizer and you have big bucks, shoot me an email because we can do something special for you. But all joking aside, producer thing is great. You get promoted, free marketing. I tweet about the producers all the time, Facebook, LinkedIn. On every podcast they're mentioned, every video they're mentioned, they're linked to from the website. Check it out. As always, thank you guys for sending your questions, and keep watching, keep submitting them. Let me know if you want to remain anonymous, and I appreciate you guys watching and listening. And this is Dan from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Until next time, take care.